Welcome to a new episode of Slabnomics. This is a very unique episode. I have not done anything like this before. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be deconstructing a rainbow. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama's 2023 Prizm, his rookie card. And we are going to go over every single facet of this card. No one, I promise you, has ever done this before on video. I am going to show you everything that I'm doing. So if you're on YouTube, you're going to be able to see this and follow along with my spreadsheet as I go through the sheets. If you're listening on Spotify, I'm going to do my best to throw those numbers at you in a way that's palatable. But I will always stop here and recommend that you follow me on Slabnomics Instagram, where I'm going to be putting this into more bite-sized chunks so that we can go over everything that's really relevant to our conversation here. Not only are we going to be looking at all of the 63 parallels of Victor Wembanyama's 2023 Prizm rookie card, we are going to be looking at different graders and different grades for all of those parallels. So you're going to be able to see which parallels outperform which ones and which grades also outperform which ones. I'm really, really excited to be able to do this for you guys. Honestly, preparing this has been a joy. And this different setup, which you're going to see on YouTube, tell me if you like it. Tell me if you don't like it. I always love feedback. If this is something super helpful to you, please let me know on Instagram or here in the comments on YouTube. And also make sure to show a friend. The format of this is I'm simply going to go through this sheet that I've been working up, and I'm going to kind of stream of consciousness, really go through what I find to be important, the things that jump out at me from all of this, and then the things that I think you can take as takeaways. But there's going to be some pretty stark things in here, some things that you're definitely going to be thinking about when you turn off this episode. So thanks for being here with me, and let's dive right in. So the 2023 Victor Wembanyama Panini Prizm, that's number 136. Up on screen, I have the base numbers. I have 873 sales, mostly in 2024 is when we're going to see a lot of the sales. And of course, we are starting out on the probably least exciting of the pages with the base, of course, in Ultra Modern with 63 different parallels. Base is something that people usually gloss over these days, but we're going to find something really interesting looking at the data. So if you look at the grave curve, because it's an Ultra Modern card, you're really not going to see that many of the PSA 1s to PSA 6 and 7. There's actually a lot of sales of PSA 6 and 7s just because there's so many of this card printed. But we go over to PSA 10, PSA 9s. We see that we have 200 sales of PSA 9s and 415 PSA 10 sales. The median then of those values was 130 on PSA 9, $487 on PSA 10. Those, of course, for the base again. We won't spend too much time on that, but going over to the grade and how they performed over time, you can see the return by the grade. And most of these are starting in 2024. So these are about a 2-year return, and you can keep that in the back of your head. The PSA 10 base has only really returned about 1x. It hasn't moved. And that's because there was so much hype coming out in 2024 for Victor Wembanyama. When this set came out, it was printed to death. And his cards were the focal point, the chase cards for everything. There's going to be another key point when I look at the silvers. So hang on to that thought about how the price hasn't really moved. Over in your PSA 9s, you've actually lost money if you've held from 2024, which is pretty crazy considering he just went to the NBA Finals. But what do I always say? 95% of cards are going to lose money. So these returns for base across the PSA ladder aren't very good. I'll pretty much leave it at that. PSA 6 shows a 52%. Not a lot of sales there. So somebody was able to make a little bit of money off of a PSA 6. Good for them. But we don't want to be chasing that kind of stuff. Going over the market cycle returns, we're not going to spend time on this right now, but we're going to get over that a little bit more into silvers. Without further ado, let's go into silvers. Now, I always start from silvers as my base point, and that's because from Ultra Moderns, this is really where we have to begin. The populations are so high on silvers for Prizms, for Donruss Opticalos. So let's take a peek at what a silver Victor Wembanyama has done since they hit the market. You can see here a PSA 9 started at about $2,212. That was the first sale, or the median of the first month, actually, is what I did on this workbook. And then 2026, that's risen to $3,025. You've netted yourself a 37% return if you bought during that first month and you've held. Is 37% great over 2 years? Not really. So that leads us to look at a PSA 9, which is something that I keep harping on recently. And we see here, just as we were seeing in a lot of the other cards that we were looking at before, a PSA 9 actually has outperformed a PSA 10. Look at the data right here, $722 in 2024. That PSA 9 has gone up to $1,200. You've made 66% return, which is very nice. And last thing that I'm going to point out here on this sheet, the PSA 8 is showing outperformance at 224%. But if you notice, that's from 2025 into 2026, which is going to lead me to my next point. When I was looking at silvers, I thought that silvers were going to have outperformed very well. So when I saw this data, the first thing I did was open Card Ladder and start going through to see if I could figure out why silver hadn't performed that hot. So I'm going to show you exactly what I looked at. I look here on Card Ladder 2023 Prizm Victor Wembanyama Silver. They've changed the outlay a little bit, so let me research on that. I was looking at golds a little bit earlier. There's a BGS black label for you. I'm going to go into the population here, and let's get to our PSA 10. We have a value of 2,750 in the PSA 10. It's gone up a little bit since I looked at the sales about 5 days ago. Of course, there was the NBA Finals going on. So 2,750 is what we're seeing as the Card Ladder value there. The population is 5,138. First of all, that 2,750 is actually lower than that spreadsheet. You can see it right there. We were at 3,025 just 5 days ago. So we're already starting to move down, which is scary for Wembanyama holders. He loses the final and all of a sudden cards start tanking. But going back to my main point about silver and how it has only moved up 37 over 2 years, there's one big thing to think about. 2 years ago, of course, the cards were hot, so the first sales out the gate were at really high prices. But another thing that we have to think about is how much the population has grown since then. So I start thinking along those lines, and I see the population here at 5,138. Which is a pretty big silver pop, especially for what I'm used to dealing with. Now, you might think like I did, well, when those first sales came out, was there already a pretty big backlog of population? We can go over to gem rate and we can actually see what it was. And I did this for you already. I put it back to January 28th of 2024. I got the 2023 Panini Prizm set on there. We got Victor Wembanyama, and in his silvers, there's only one gem, and there were 6 total graded. So one gem, and the price was, let's see what it was again, 2,212. So at one population, the entire market cap of silvers at that time was simply $2,212. Fast forward to now, we're over 5,000 on the pop, and we've seen silvers go up about 37%. So when we see that market expand by that much, the price appreciation is going to be stymied by that population growth. This is so relevant in ultra modern. Anything that's really 2020 on, and I'm probably being a little bit generous there in the year, maybe 2018, there's so much overprinting going on that the silvers really get priced out. I talked before about the total float or total population and market cap of cards before. And if you look at the market caps for silvers, it's actually the biggest population. $21.2 million of value is tied up in silver prisms. That's across PSA, SGC, BGS, CGC. Most of it, vast majority, of course, is PSA. But that is the biggest market cap for any parallel. So it is the most popular card by that metric. It's just that you haven't really gotten price appreciation because too many more cards have flooded the market. Now, hearing about all this, maybe you're still thinking to yourself, I know that silvers are culturally important. I know that they're going to last for a long, long time. Maybe there's something that you fondly have remembered from early days of collecting, and you really love silvers. Well, I can tell you that silvers can still be a very premium asset. What I'm finding is that PSA 10 of silvers for ultra-modern cards like 2023 Prizms are not really those that hold value long-term and have long-term huge appreciation. But what does is actually Beckett. If you look at the 10 pristine, the value is at 10,047. So right now you're at about 3.5 or 3.7. That's what a PSA 10 is. If you look at that black label, you're sitting there at 61,000 with a pop of 5. ultra rarity matters, and people are going to be willing to pay for that premium of that perfect card for cards I find like silver and gold. And if we go back and we look at what the price appreciation has looked like for those cards, let's go to the appreciation tab. I have all of the grades broken out here for you on screen. The PSA 10 shows you there that 37%. There's annualized if you want to look at that here. PSA 9 then shows the 66%. But let's go down to Beckett. Your 9.5 is showing the latest at 1,659. Not a very strong result. Not a great percentage change for the last 2 years. Looks like this one was from March of 2024 and the last one sold in May of 2026. So not great appreciation from your 9.5s, which makes sense. In the past couple of years, Beckett hasn't really done well in terms of what their 9.5s are valued as. But look at that black label. That black label has gone up 167%. You can still have massive appreciation for a market size that's a little bit bigger. We'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to golds. You can see, of course, the 10 Pristine has also done 91%. So those are way above where the other silvers were. And honestly, if you're looking at the math, they've only gone up that much, and the population has gone up so much less than those PSA 10s. For me, I really love those as long-term assets to hold. And speaking of assets to hold, I'm going back to Card Ladder here. I'm going back to our silvers one more time. I won't do this for every parallel, just so you know, but this is a really interesting thing to look at. I'm going to go look at PSA 10s, which is very liquid. We have it selling all the time, changing hands. The float is out there. Everyone's selling PSA 10s all the time. Now you can look at the highest price here. You can sort it here, go to price, sorted descending. So we have the highest one it's ever sold for here at the top, almost $6,000. This is best offer, which is something we always take with a grain of salt because technically anyone can go and buy a best offer. So I could set up another account, sell something on eBay, and from my other account, buy that thing, pay for it, ship it to myself, etc. So this is something that's well known in the hobby. This is something we do not recommend. I have never done this. I will never do this. It is not a good way to go. But when you see best offer, a lot of times people will treat that with skepticism if it's an outlier price as we see here. So let's just look at the other one, 5,216 on gold on May 28th. That makes sense. The run up into the finals, Wemby was hot, hot, hot. So 5,216, remember it's down to 2,700 right now. So it's lost almost twice. It's almost gone down 50% since that high of less than a month ago. And this happens a lot when you have an event-driven catalyst like NBA Finals. If you win and you're the MVP of things like Brunson, then your card market is going to balloon and it's going to stay up there. If you're the lottery ticket on the other side that unfortunately doesn't pan out, we usually see massive weakness come in here. This is when I'm gobbling up things like black labels. On the other side of things, looking at the highest price that we had around 5,200, the lowest price that we had, sorting the other way and actually finding the real ones. Let's just look at this 540. Somebody got lucky on 165, it seems, but 540 seems like a pretty good entry price. So 540 was the true lowest, and the median that we had here on the silver prisms was 2,212. So one of the reasons why that 37% number seems pretty small is because it started high, it dipped pretty low down to 500, which is quite a loss, and then it rocketed back up to 5,500. So a lot of times we're missing what the data is really telling us, that there's so many opportunities to buy low on these players, these great players that had super high expectations at first, may not have delivered on those right away. Investors lost patience. There was an injury to Wemby that was pretty serious. But if you were able to stand your ground and get it at 500 and sell it at the top, you actually 10x'd. So that's some data that's not in here that I wanted to bring up. Silvers are the most liquid of all of the cards. They're transacting with the most frequency. So buying and selling silvers and being able to move in and out of them can be an incredibly lucrative. All right. And let me show you guys on Card Ladder here. This is going to illustrate perfectly my point. If you bought it right when it came out, which I always say, do not buy a card when it first comes out. You paid about $2,600, but then right here, you had a shallow trough where all of this was great buying opportunities. It spiked up here. This is when you're selling on the way up, just grabbing your 80%. taken your 3x right here if you got it at 1K. Not even the lowest, guys. If you get it right here when it's first starting to dip and you sell it right here when it's just making its way up on the 80% gain, you're getting 3x off of that. That's how you trade in and out of silvers. I don't really look at them as a long-term hold unless you're doing something like a Black Label or a BGS 10 Pristine, which I think will stand the test of time because they have hyper rarity and they have beautiful condition attached to them. So enough about silvers. I can talk all day about silvers. Let's go over and let's find out the greater premiums. This is something that we're all trying to figure out. How much should a BGS 9.5 be versus a PSA 10 versus a PSA 9? How much should a BGS 10 Pristine be or a BGS 10 Black Label? And the more data that we can get for this, the more we can find outliers. And we can figure out if those outliers are driven by markets or if there's something unfound by markets yet, opportunities, gems that we can pull out. This is the kind of stuff that I'm doing for my Slabnomics investor tier subscribers on slabnomics.com. Check out slabnomics.com to see the stuff I'm doing over there. But to get over to this really quick, it's about what you would think. Ultra Modern is pretty well known. So you can see SGC 10 versus a PSA is about 68, 69 over at CGC. So about the same. And then if you're looking at a 9, it's around the same range. You're looking at a 65 to a 78. BGS coming in very weak on this one for a 9. And then on the BGS 10 is down here, 221. So 2x for a BGS 10. Oh, and by the way, this is the base parallel. So this isn't even silvers. This is just base parallel stuff. I did not run this for silvers yet, but when I put it up on slabnomics.com, I'll make sure to put the silver one as well. So 221% on your 10 Pristine. It's worth double what a PSA 10 is. And that's because the population of the base is just so ridiculous. SGC Pristine is actually pretty surprisingly at 115%. If you have a really nice copy, don't send it to SGC. There you go. Not for Ultra Modern anyway. All right, and let's click over to appreciation. This is where the really good stuff happens. I teased this already looking at the silvers. I'm going to go here, and there's so much data. How much is there in the spreadsheet? We have 271 different entries of different parallels, different graders, different grades. So first thing I'm going to do, and I want to find you guys the ones that are the highest performers. Let's see what we got out of 271. Start getting your guesses in for which ones were the highest performers. Maybe you think it's a 1 of 1, although spoiler alert, not a lot of sales of those, so kind of hard to track. But maybe you think it is a silver. So here we go. I was surprised by this, guys. Gold Sparkle came in number 1. Gold Sparkle out of 24, which is not something that I really care about usually, but this is what the data tells us. A PSA 9 Gold Sparkle Prizm went up by 955%. Now, little caveat here, the first sale you can see there is from 2025 in March. That was a key weakness time, that trough that I was showing you guys before in his market. So this was obviously when the market was down, someone was able to scoop up a PSA 9, and maybe they sold it here, maybe someone else did, but went up about 10x. That's pretty solid. I mean, I'll take 10x over a year span for sure. The Gold Sparkle PSA 10 also coming in there. I think if we were able to find a sale around the same time as that 2025, it would probably be higher, in my opinion. But I don't know. That's just conjecture from me. Now let's think about other things. So is it just hyper rarity that's going to be driving the most appreciation? Let's see what the data is going to tell us. The Red Ice Beckett 10 was a massive one, 377. And that one was 2024, the end of 2024, so still pretty strong in Wemby's market. Fast Break Prisms out of 100 in a Black Label, about 4x. I love seeing the Black Label up there. And interestingly enough, some of the Pulsar stuff. Green Pulsar Prisms out of 25 appreciate about 600%. I did not expect that. A Beckett 9 Orange Ice went up quite a bit at about 482%. But one of the things that I find when going through this spreadsheet that I'm always surprised about is it's not always PSA 10s. So that's my first point here. You might think that PSA 10s are always the way to go, that they're going to appreciate most. In fact, that's what most podcasts and creators tell you. Buy PSA 10, those are the ones that go up. Well, what I've actually found is if you get a 9 in cards that transact a lot, those are usually the ones that move up a lot. You see here the white ice prisms out of 35 in a PSA 9, that went up 390%. White wave prisms in a PSA 10, same thing, out of 38, went up 372%. So it might not be the ones you would have thought of. It might not be a gold. It might not be an orange. But all across the board, these prices are moving. Things are appreciating at different rates based off of so many different factors. The second key insight that I found looking at all of this is that your biggest performers are going to be cards that are up to 199 in their print run. So usually stuff from about 35 to 25 up to about 199 are the things that appreciated the most. You see, here's out of 75 was a top, 4 performer. And then the first 3 were out of 24, out of 24, out of 25. Orange ice, it seems ice does really well in basketball. You have a black gold out of 5 down here a little bit, maybe about number 11 or so. My numbering is a little bit off on this spreadsheet, so I'm going to kind of approximate for you guys. But that's the biggest thing, that second thing for you guys. It's going to be somewhere from 25 to 199. You don't have to have everything out of 10. You don't have to have everything out of 50. You can have those out of 199s or out of 150. And I found that a lot with soccer as well. Out of 150 on the 2017 Topps Chrome. The blues are really nice. People like those. It's just about what people really like. Let's move down this list a little bit, see if we can pick out anything really interesting. Now we're down. These are still up 200%, about 45, maybe 40 of the way down. White sparkle prisms, a PSA 10, they've gone up 200%. So very nice appreciation there. And that's from the end of 2024, very early in this card's market. So I would say if you got a nicer price point, probably could have gotten an even higher gain on those white sparkles. Basketball, those just sell like hotcakes. Let's see, moving down a little bit more. Base 9.5 and Beckett is surprisingly at 240%. So sure, a Beckett doesn't sell as high as a PSA, but all that really matters is percentage. If I have $10,000 and I move that into 20 different cards, it's about the percentage gain that I get from those 20 different cards. You could buy all base cards in Beckett 9.5 with that 10,000 and you would have made 240. And maybe if you bought all green pulsar prisms with it instead in a PSA 9, you would have only gotten 169%, even though it's out of 25. Definitely something to think about, guys. How is my money performing? Not, do I have the most expensive card? If you're going to be selling that card, what matters isn't how expensive it is. What matters is your percentage gain of dollars invested. Moving down a little bit more, SGC and those ice. I'm telling you, ice has been a really strong performer across many different parallels, many different colors, rather. You got your orange out of 49 all the way down here, kind of a middling result from your orange prisms, 184%, which is nice, but I would have expected orange prisms would be up there. I'm trained to think out of 50 is going to be hot. But I think the problem is when we look at these rainbows, there are so many freaking parallels. There's 63 of them. So orange prisms out of 49, there's like 3 other out of 49s. You got a choice blue prism. It's a little silly when we get into the numbers of all of these things. Because, oh, by the way, the market cap for all of these, this is all the parallels, all the grades, all the graders. This is as perfect as a number as you're going to get to tell you how much the 2023 Prizm Wemby market pool is. It's $138 million invested. That is, to give you context, significantly more than Nolan Ryan's rookies. That number was about 77 million. Wemby at this point is about double, a Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers that's ever existed, and a vintage stalwart. So that being said, let's look down at some of the cards that haven't performed very well. We're still up here at 70%, about halfway through the list. So all of his stuff has done really well. But hey, you could have had a PSA 10 neon green fast break prism, and you could only be up 47%. You could be congratulating yourself because you're up 47%. You had an out of 5, a super rare card. It was a PSA 10, but look at what the returns are. That's all that matters. That money would have done so much more work for you over here at a blue Prizm out of 199 and a PSA 9. 166. All right. Moving down now to look at some of the real laggers here. Let's see what really didn't do well. Ruby Wave back at 10, pristine. Okay. We had Ruby Wave a little bit higher though. Hyper Prism and a PSA 10, that's one that's pretty good to call out here. Looks like we don't have a lot of sales actually from early, so we can probably disregard that. Any cards graded early for Hyper Prisms, I'll have to look into that. Let's see if we can grab one where we actually had some Purple Pulsars and a PSA 9. Hyper Rarity, but only a PSA 9. Didn't do too hot. Maybe Purple, maybe Pulsar. There's so much to dive into and figure out what it is, what kind of patterns we can grab from the data and find for how we can figure out what to invest in later. All right, let's actually turn down to things that were pretty much even. See if we have some sales from 2024 into 2026, 2024 into 25. There's a red seismic out of 299 and SGC 95. That didn't do anything for you over, well, that's only a couple months, so forget about that. Yeah, everything down here is pretty illiquid in terms of sales prices. We got a lot of twos down there. Yeah, I mean, the only real thing to call out here is looking at a base PSA 10. It's only gone up 4% over this time period. So if you got it in 2024, sure, there were some dips where you could have gotten it early. But if you got in 2024, you held on for dear life until the NBA Finals, you made 4%, which didn't keep pace with inflation. So very unfortunate. Let's see what actually lost you money. If there's anything that was kind of long-term that lost money here, you know, if there was enough time lag in there, these things should have really straightened themselves out with how much his market has appreciated. All right, let's look down here. Seeing a lot of things with not a lot of sales, a lot of like SGC 10 stuff that really you shouldn't be doing. What was the one that I was looking at before? There was a PSA 10 down here somewhere. I don't think that Choice Cherry Blossom really did well. I think the Plum Blossoms, I think those are only an optic, but I don't think those do very well either. The whole flower thing was weird. Like, guys, we don't need trees as our prints. You guys are just really running out of ideas at the lab there. But Pink Pulsar out of 42 and a PSA 9, probably not something that you should have been buying and trying to appreciate with. That lost you some money. Ice Prisms and a Beckett 9, pretty liquid there. Base PSA 6. Let's see. SGC 10 didn't do very well for you on the base. And Glitter Prisms in a PSA 9, pretty rough on that one. So you lost 17% trying to go after that PSA 9 Glitter Prism. So not all PSA 9s are going to do it for you. Oh, but there's our Cherry Blossom in a PSA 10. Look at that. In 7 months, you lost 21%. Pretty rough. It's probably come back a little bit up from that. Maybe you got even, but stay away from cherry blossoms, guys. If there's one thing you remember from this episode, cherry blossom equals stay away. So that's what we're seeing. This is something that at some point I'm going to have up on the website for you guys, for all of my investor tier subscribers. You'll be able to play around with this if you have some questions in your mind. Maybe you were looking at some parallels and trying to figure out which have lasted and which have continued to appreciate and which have lagged. This is going to be a resource for you that's incredibly valuable. For this, it's basketball. It's one player, one set in basketball. But the more data that I'm going to push into this stuff, the more we can check an orange for basketball versus an orange of soccer versus an orange of NFL, the more we're going to be starting to get real psychologically based data. Because at the end of the day, humans buy things for specific reasons, and those choices are usually reflected in the data. We just have to triangulate enough to triage into why that choice was made and take away the other constituents of why that choice was made. So that's the data for you guys. Let me see if I can find a gold. I know I was trying to add golds in here, but it was pretty sparse on the sales. Let's see. We got gold shimmer. We got photo. We got sparkle. I showed you guys sparkle already. All right. The gold for Wemby, I know sold one time, but I want to give you that point, that data point, so that you guys can see what golds look like, because I gave you a lot of silvers and we looked at orange a little bit. We looked at some other parallels. So let's see where the gold sits. There was only one sale. I'm going to go to price, move it Yeah, where's my one? There it is. All right, sold in 9.5. I've looked all over to try and find other gold sales. We don't have any from what I've seen. But this BGS 9.5 gem mint with 1.9, so it's a min gem, that has gone up from 150K of sold price in May of 2024 to a card ladder value of 610K. So about 4x. That 4x would track to 4x percent change. It would be about top 10. But hey, number one, that's a Beckett 9.5. So got to keep that in mind. We would probably get better appreciation with a PSA 10 or even a PSA 9. But also good to keep in mind that that was at the height of Wemby's outpouring of the market when all the cards were coming to market. So appreciation might be a little bit higher in the gold. I would always expect gold to be a really high performer. The biggest surprise of all this data, guys, was these gold sparkle prisms. I'm definitely going to be looking into these things, seeing if there's a pattern of data showing us that gold sparkle is something maybe just in basketball it's huge, or maybe in other sports it's also just as big. So the takeaways that I want to have for you guys here, number one, when you buy matters. Trying to buy at the high point or when cards just came out is almost a sure way, even if there's a big run up later, to lose money. And it's going to make you freak out and probably make a bad decision. So psychologically speaking, not a good way to go. The second thing, PSA 10 is not always what you need to buy. PSA 9s for good cards, for rare cards that are very valuable in people's eyes and wanted by people, high demand, those are going to appreciate usually very well. And ancillary to that point, remember that's all about percentage ROI, because the same dollars invested could be 10K into one card or 10K into 20 cards, and the ROI is what matters at the end of the day. The next thing to keep in mind, just like it's not just the PSA 10 that matters, it's not just the gold out of 10 that matters. It's not just the out of 25 that matters. We actually found out of 75 a lot of times, out of 100, out of 199. These cards for iconic legendary players that have a huge market are always going to appreciate very, very well. They're going to be high performers because the market for those specific cards is going to be bigger than the market for that gold out of 10. Not everybody can plunk down 150K. That thins out the pool of who can actually buy that gold card. That's why I like silvers and golds, depending on which players and rookies you're looking at. But enough to be said as well, out of these, out of 100s, out of 35s, sometimes out of 5s, but actually those lagged a lot of times. So that was the third thing. We also need to find which parallels are good. And then fourth, being able to find which graders are best at what levels can really be important for long term. I'm a huge believer in BGS 10 Pristine and Black Label, especially for iconic cards. I think the 2023 Wemby is going to be one of those cards. It's already proven itself by having $138 million invested just to those cards, those 63 parallels. So I'm going to continue putting out this data for you guys. We're going to have more and more intelligence attached to it. I'm going to give you one more recommendation to follow me on Instagram at Slabnomics, and even better, to sign up at slabnomics.com for the investor tier. You're going to get a free newsletter that only goes to those subs. You're going to get deep dive podcasts that only goes to those subs. And you're going to be getting all of this data put out on the website for you, not just for Wemby, not just for Ultramodern, but for vintage, for baseball, for basketball, for Ultramodern, for all the parallels, all the graders, all the data. So thanks so much for being along for the ride. And as always, keep building, and I will talk to you later.